for me, like I started as a DP, and story was always the thing that I didn't really enjoy, thinking too much about. I thought a lot about it, but I also hated the 3-act structure. And I think for a lot of people who get into documentary filmmaking, I think this is a thing for filmmakers who go to film school. They want to do documentaries because it's more free, and because you don't have to direct documentaries in the same way. That's at least why I gravitated towards it. And I think that just made it really hard for me to like trust that the storytelling aspects of like the traditional storytelling aspects was interesting enough to like tell a story like that. And now funnily I rarely watch movies anymore, but I do watch with my my kids. So I watch kids movies a lot, 2 times a week. And I'm so fascinating that like this simple 3-act structure, it's so effective because you sit there and you really enjoy the movies, and like they're even dubbed in Swedish for my kids. So like it's terrible, but I still enjoy it. And I think that's quite fascinating that like that's the way that filmmaking can be, like when you work with the traditional formats of story. And like for me, that was something that I had to come to learn in terms of like, okay, so if I use like the hero structure, which is something that Joseph Campbell like popularized a while ago, but it's like you have a character, main character, it has a goal, and then it goes out and it has to like overcome tons of obstacles to get to what they want or the goal. And on the way, like there's so many things that go wrong that they are forced to transform, and eventually like they transform, and on the way they probably lose something as well, like they might lose a loved one or whatever, and that forces them to change and transform. And that's really what like story is in a nutshell. And I think that's the hard thing when you start out, is to understand that it can be that simple really, and that's interesting enough to just have that. But what are your thoughts like about story? Like what types of stories do you gravitate towards? And do you feel the same about story? Because I don't think, like, most feature films are super boring because they're too predictable, while documentaries have a natural feel to it, and a natural type of I don't know, narratives aren't as predictable, and that sort of makes it more enjoyable to watch. And also because it feels like it's so weird when you are starting with like a story, and you're going out on this quest to film everything, and then like everything just takes you in, and you're just going on that journey yourself while you make a doc. That fascinates me the most, like the process of making it. I enjoy that more than watching films. And I feel like that's what you're trying to also bring into the edit when you finish the film and tell the story. You're just trying to like get the people to feel the same way as you felt while you were making it, as deeply as you felt it. And that's the hard thing. So let me see some questions here. Why vertical? I wanted to try it on the phone. I don't know if I'm gonna continue doing vertical, but I wanted to try it just to see how the algorithm also handles it, because I think it might like promote it in a different way when it's like categorized like the shorts. So I wanted to try that out. That's why it's vertical this time. I don't know if I'll continue the vertical, because I am shooting the same thing on a camera behind you, which is like my other Pocket 4K camera. And also, I still shoot on the Pocket 4Ks. It's my favorite camera. I don't know why anybody would want a different camera than that. Let's see. Arsenic 901. I'm making a boxing documentary. Partly shot it, but full edits on me. Okay. Let's see. How does an independent director get one-off jobs for companies like Sony, Corona, or branded content, in case of emailing a pitch or sending money, spending money on social ads so people see your work? I think like the main thing, Remy, is that you need to build like a portfolio basically of your work, And I think that the big thing is really to do that in a way where you are unique and you have a unique style. So you try to just cater to what you believe in and try to capture that in what you do. And I think it's a great way to do like spec work. And I think it's a great way to do short films, like passion films, because they set like the stage for this. And if you think even more long term, that's what I did. Like I made feature films. That's what brought my career to another level. Every time I do a film, that's really what levels it up. Like every time I do a film, there's like a big PR campaign and there's like a lot of stuff around it, and people see that, and then all of a sudden they start calling to get similar projects as that. And I think that's what happens with like all directors. They get put in a box, like this is the type of films he or she does. And I think that's what you want to get out of sometimes, but it's also what you can use to your advantage if you do stuff that they see that you are the perfect one for this. And I think that's what you should really strive for. Because the hard thing is that you cannot really contact these big brands just because like the way that they work with agencies most of the time. Like some don't, but some do sometimes. Like Craft, for instance, we work with, they have like agencies for some stuff, but we're running their YouTube channel, so that means that we have a deal with them to just do the YouTube channel. So in a way, like we are their agency for doing YouTube, and that's an interesting way that I see like the industry transitioning to now. And I think, is it Creator Science, a podcast? Like the latest episode and the episode before that, check those out because they talk about like how you get sponsored content and brand deals and stuff. And I think the latest one was really good because it's very spot on, like how you should think. And it sort of doesn't matter if you have a lot of followers or not. Like, of course, that can be good, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. And I think, like, mainly, either you get in contact with the agencies or you try to hit up the marketing directors at the brands. But oftentimes, when it's a bigger brand like Sony, that's hard because they're just too big. Yeah. But there's a lot of strategies for just getting, your brand to start kick off. I think that's a big thing, to just build your brand and to get your visionary like views of how to make films. Just show that through what you do. That's the best way. About being portable. Yeah, about the iPhone. This is funny because I usually shoot with the iPhone on a gimbal, walking and like shooting myself. That works really well in landscape. So that's what I think I'll do if this works. But it's just the internet here in the countryside is not as good as I would have hoped. So that can be an issue. But otherwise, I really like the idea of using the iPhone. So let's see, next one. Do you think an expensive website showcasing your best work would help to land more potential projects? I don't really think so. I think the work you have and send, like it can be a link to a video, like Vimeo, for instance, or YouTube, or like Instagram, for instance, are super effective. So I don't think you need a website, but I do think that there's a ton of stuff that I've learned since I started focusing more on the Learn Documentary platform. There are so much stuff that you can do and that I plan on doing, like for B2B, business to business stuff, targeting brands to do more brand work like I do for Craft Sportswear, like running their YouTube channel, doing their strategy work for that. There's really effective ways of doing that through ads and through just like looking at how you can work with, for instance, building your brand on LinkedIn, for instance, is a great way of doing it. But you need to become like a thought leader in the space that you're doing. And by doing that, you can also get your work out by being that thought leader. And another way to get all that like connections that you need is to have like a podcast or something where you invite the people to talk about what they do. So, let's say you want to work with Sony, for instance. Okay, so what type of work is it for Sony? Like, think about those things and like, okay, so could I start a podcast where I invite the people that I want to work with and facilitate this discussion, inviting them, and then like, how could that transition into me building a network that lands me deals? That could also be a way. Like, there's so many ways that you can do that without having a website. Yeah, documentary is so wonderful because you're weaving literal moments of life together. Yeah, that's super true. How many of you are on the phone and how many are at desktop? Just curious. Okay, so I have a question about verite filmmaking. Your doc, The Pearl of Africa, has so many natural, beautiful, personal moments. Do you have any suggestions about how to perfect verite form? I think for me, like a big thing is to just hang out with the people. I think that's like the thing that makes the camera go away. I think that a lot of people that are not coming from a DP background used to like always having a camera with people. It feels intrusive and it feels like it's something that, you know, is a filter between you and the person and that they are uncomfortable, but really it's you that are uncomfortable and projecting those feelings to that person, and then they become uncomfortable because of that. Because I feel like I have never experienced any problem with the camera as long as I'm, you know, conversational with the people, and just like I always have the camera in my hand or something just to get them used to it. And I always just talk to them a lot, like that isn't an interview and that's just hanging out with them. And I think that's really the biggest secret is just to smile a lot and just hang out with them and do the stuff that they do in their daily lives. So that would mean like, even if I don't want to drink one night, I will do that just to bond with them. Or if I don't want to train or run up a mountain today, I will do that to bond with them. Those types of things, I think you need to do the things that they like doing and just to connect with them as humans. That's the best way to get that footage, and then spend a lot of time with them and just hanging out. It just builds trust, and it gives you the opportunity to really get them natural in like your relationships, but also get used to the camera, and then like miking them up and having that on for a whole day or something. They will forget about that, and eventually when you've shot enough, they'll forget about the camera as well. They won't think about the camera if you film for a day or two. That's why I don't like doing interviews in the beginning. I usually postpone that until I feel like, okay, now they're comfortable with the camera, because it just sucks when you do the interview too early. Like, they won't answer stuff very well. And I've done that many times. Like Nelson in The Pearl of Africa was one of those examples where I just felt forced to do an interview because I needed to get a trailer done when I got home from one of the trips. I think it was my second trip there. And I got home and like I felt like that material was so useless. He was so terrible. But that became his transformation as a character in the film. He was super shy, super like weirded out about the whole situation of being filmed, and then like he just became this amazing character during the filming. And I think that's what you want that transformation, really. So like, I've learned to not judge things in that way anymore and instead embrace it, just because that transformation is what you want that to happen. And like, it's easy to turn off the camera and think that it's shit, but eventually like these things just make sense eventually when you work for long enough on the project. Let's see. I'm finished up in a documentary. Some around 15 minutes long. Yeah, too long. That's the hardest thing. So like editing stuff down, that's like the biggest thing to learn, to just cut things out. And I'm ruthless with editing stuff down so much that like stuff can go out and then I might miss them. And since I worked a lot as an editor, I don't work for others as an editor anymore, but I did that and DP'd for many years, both those jobs before directing. And editing is just something that is always collaborative. So it's so easy to like get into that groove. If you edit a lot, it's easy to not be like too fond of your shots and that sort of thing, that I think a lot of directors, and especially self-shooting directors, have trouble, you know, cutting things out. But I think that's super important to learn, just to not be at all connected to the footage. And also it's easier if you try to get other people to just give their opinion, because sometimes you can get like all sensitive about like all the comments that you get. But that's also a thing that you learn by editing a lot and getting a lot of feedback, that it usually isn't that they have an idea that's good to solve it in the way that you envision it, because that rarely is the case. But they usually are pointing at some problem that actually is there that you need to work more on. But then you need to do it in like your way. But yeah, cutting it down is super hard. And it's easy to like have a long cut first, and then you start to take stuff out, and then you'll see, do you miss it or not. Short stories, do you work only as a director, or do you also camera edit production for others? I used to, as I said, but I don't anymore, and I feel like that's a good way to learn everything. Like I started wanting to direct, that was, you know, in film school. And then I did that a while in the film school, and then I studied photography, and I studied cinematography later on, as I was like, I studied for 3 years, I think. Then I did 2 years of that, and that got me into like the DP world. And then I started doing that, and I worked with a director back then. So he directed everything, and I edited and shot everything, and we had a production company back then together. And then from that, we did like a short film. And that's when I started directing again, because it became a project where like we were 3 directors. And then from that, I started directing docs after that film. And I did that, and I DP'd for others for a while, and I edited for others for a while. But now, for instance, when I do my films, I edit them myself, but I work with other editors as well. So some TV shows we've been like 5 editors on, and the Kino project that I've been doing has been me and another editor. So it can vary. So it's usually not just me. But yeah, how do you balance between long-term documentary projects and doing other maybe more commercial work? Yeah, that's the toughest part, I think, and that's what I'm trying to get away from that. Like I would like to like do brand work and that sort of thing when it makes sense, but I don't want that to be like the living blood of my career, because that's what it's been like. Because doc filmmaking didn't start to generate money for me until like after Pearl of Africa. So it wasn't too long ago that I could live off of making documentaries and TV shows. And before that, everything was funded by me doing advertising stuff. And before the Pearl of Africa, those advertising gig was very low pay. It was maybe like 15,000 was a big budget, something like that. And like the film before, which was Zero Silence, my first film, before that, it was probably like 5K projects. So it's like gone up exponentially. After Pearl of Africa, it became like 50K projects. And then like it just kept moving up. And that's why I think those films are so valuable to make, because those projects are really like your business card or your website or whatever it is. Doing those films and just investing in them can seem like, you know, it's not worth it when you're making it and you're not getting funded, but it's been so worth it. It's built my career, at least. And yeah, now I'm trying to balance that much more. To like I've spent this year, since I have like these bigger brand deals, I can work on those, you know. I have that set for a year at a time, so it's like an ongoing thing. So I know what's gonna happen, and then sometimes I'll do an ad or something, but most of the time I'm just working on my projects. And when they're funded, it's really easy. But then what I don't like about like working with TV, that I've done a lot, is that those projects, they become owned by TV, and that also means that they will own your schedule and they will want you to work a certain way. And I prefer working freelance in terms of like making my films, to have them be free and then sell them once they're done, because that makes it much easier to get my life puzzle together and also to tell the stories as I want to tell them. So I'm trying to balance that out now, to find like a way to get more free in terms of funding projects and all that. But it's really difficult to balance it, because you're so forced to do like, you're forced to do commercial work, but the films that you do, they are supposed to sell and all that. And like when you start out, it's really easy to just do it as passion projects, but after a while you just want stability. And like when you get kids, it's even more stability, and like just being able to plan, like, okay, this is the holiday, this is this. That's the difficult part about continuing working like that, I think. What have you learned by communicating with TV stations, producers, so you're not hating it as much as enjoying making films for hire? That's the thing. I don't enjoy it at all. I don't enjoy it at all. I hate it, really. I hate it. Because every project I've made has been a fantastic experience until I get into the editing room. And until I get to the first rough cut, that's when I always get the nose. I don't understand anything. And it frustrates me so much, because like it's obvious, like everything is there, but TV's way of making sense of things is just like bringing this explicit voiceover to make everything very over explicit. And that just it's just the opposite of what good filmmaking is to me. Just not using the cinematic language, so it just frustrates me too much to work with TV. I get so like frustrated with that, because it sort of dumbs your ideas down, and I haven't handled that in the way that I should. So the first project I made that was like that, I was just run over by the producers, and then I accepted it because it was their format as well. So I made my film or series, but it was just this series that was part of a bigger like format on TV. And then like you fit into that, and yeah, they have their way of working. And then we did another series where I was just like, no, I'm not gonna let that happen again. And then I was just a pain in the ass to the TV station while we were making it, because I did not want them to destroy the project. Because like you notice quite quickly when you get into the editing room that they're actually making a totally different film than you. And that's the frustrating part. Like you start to make something together, you develop it together, and then like of course it has to be with the communication to do as well. Like I probably could have communicated better, they can definitely communicate better, but it's just the way that TV is a lot of the time is that they think that they know a lot and everything. And especially, yeah, they might about their audience, but at the same time, they're bringing, outside directors in to do stuff that is more fresh and out of the box from what like the television does otherwise. And you feel used and you get used by them. And that's like the hardest part about doing TV, is that it's just the same as working with a brand doing commercials. It's the exact same thing. But I work with public service that's supposed to be like good art and that sort of thing. But it's not. It's just the same thing as working with a brand. So then I prefer to work with a brand, because a brand doesn't work, in this false way. That's just my opinion on the topic. But yeah, that doesn't bring any joy to me, at least. And I think that if you want to do it, you need to be able to accept that they will like twist your idea to their type of style. And I don't want to do that. I prefer to do like stuff outside of TV because of that. Let's see. The hard part is not that happening. Yeah. Let's see. Hello, Nodas from Greece. Let's see. Getting others' opinion. Turning point, a great point. Yeah, like just getting other people's opinion in the edit. It doesn't have to be like this big thing either, because when I made the Pearl of Africa, I sent it out to a lot of director friends and editing friends that I knew. None of them really dared to say much about it. Like most of them was just like, yeah, it's great. That was like an early cut. And that is one thing that can happen when you bring people in that you know, which can be a problem. So I actually, for that, had a different editor that I worked with. I usually do that for my projects. I have another editor come in and work with me in the edit to just work with the story. It's like a story consultant. And I think that's a really invaluable thing, because when you do that, you have a really unique opportunity to get like fresh eyes and get somebody else to give feedback. But it's not, if you're doing like low budget films, it's not as expensive as long as you can edit yourself to do that. But you can have really great editors come in and give their opinion and work with you, you know, in detail. So for Pearl of Africa, that's what I did, and that's really what created the narrative arc of like being one journey instead of a lot of journeys, which it was before. So it was too scattered. But I think that's the challenge, because I didn't know him very well. I just had met him at the film festival through a different director who was friends with him. So I knew nothing, but yeah, I just took a chance, and he gave so good feedback that I just wanted to hire him. So he just kept working on the project until it was done, and came here to edit it as well for a week. So yeah, I think that's a really good thing to point out when you're collaborating with people, that like people that know you might just agree with you, which can be a problem. Lucas, hi Johnny, love your work. Oh, thanks. Thank you for telling the real truth about the TV experience. Yeah, like TV for me is probably the most difficult. The most difficult aspect of working with TV is probably that they fund a lot of projects if you want to make them in Sweden, because there's two ways. It's either TV or it's Swedish Film Institute. These two can't collaborate. Like they cannot agree on many things. So either you have to go the the SVT route or the Film Institute route. And the Film Institute route is like promoting new, like visionary type of thinking, and TV is the opposite. So it's just impossible for them to collaborate, and that's the money you have as an opportunity. So that doesn't simplify it, and I guess it's similar wherever you are. You got that type of dynamics a lot of the time. But on the other hand, like with Netflix, for instance, they don't pay for development a lot of the time. They can if you pitch it and they take it as an original, but otherwise they won't pay for your development. So that like becomes a problem if you want to do Netflix, you have to sort of fund it in a different way. And in Sweden, for instance, Swedish Film Institute won't fund a film that's going to Netflix. You got to have a different strategy, because you can't seal that deal most of the time until like later stages. And nowadays it's harder to pitch feature films there as well. So you pretty much need to do like a package deal where you get agents on board, and like it has to be a bigger thing, which makes it more difficult. Now it's possible if you pitch it to get them, you know, to get your project as an original deal. That's something that's viable, but it makes it much more difficult for new filmmakers to make a film, you know, and to make it that good, and also to fund it when there's no development. So then you might end up doing like I've done, TV deals or whatever it is. Even though I didn't want to make it with them, I had to do it because it was the only way to get the project made. That's pretty much what a lot of my projects with TV has been, because I never liked working with them. But for instance, during Corona, I was forced to like, okay, I need to come up with a Swedish project because I couldn't do my international projects anymore. So I came up with this idea of a Swedish series, and I pitched that, and we got it greenlit, and then we did it. And it came from just the reasoning of, okay, I need a project in Sweden because otherwise I won't make any money during COVID. but that's the way it is sometimes, and you just gotta accept it. Yeah. So let me see. Do I have anything? Yeah, otherwise this was fun. I'll try to do these a bit more often. But if you want help pitching your film or developing your story, I have a program on learndocumentary.com. Check that out. Otherwise, write some questions and I'll get to them in a next video. Thanks for hanging out. Friday. Woohoo!